Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're stepping right into the shoes of archaeologists to unravel a truly massive ancient mystery. We're looking at how prehistoric people managed to build monumental wooden structures that, quite honestly, baffle even modern engineers. Let's dive right in. So, we really have to ask ourselves right off the bat, what did these giant rows of wooden pillars actually mean? Because we're not just talking about a couple of old logs thrown together here. Why would the Jomon people, who were hunter-gatherers with absolutely no written language, spend unimaginable amounts of time and energy to build these towering wooden structures and massive timber circles? As an archaeologist, the real takeaway here is that these weren't just pieces of wood. They were literal messages reaching up to the sky. What were they thinking as they looked up at these colossal pillars? That is the central mystery we're cracking today. Moving on to Section 1, Jomon Architecture, the mystery of giant woods. When you actually look at the data from the ruins, the sheer scale of what they built is just absolutely staggering. Down at the Sinai Mariyama site in Al-Mari Prefecture, they didn't just grow chestnuts. They actually erected a massive 3-story tower using these incredibly huge wooden pillars. And then over at the Malwaki and Shikamori sites in Ishikawa, we found these breathtaking circular rows of wood, just massive wood circles. Malwaki even gave us dolphin bones and Japan's oldest carved wooden mask. The fact that these colossal projects were happening in completely different, geographically distant locations shows us that this wasn't an isolated event. It was a widespread cultural phenomenon. Now, the crucial number tying all this incredible architecture together is 5,500. Around 5,500 years ago, this massive building boom peaked right during the Middle Jomon period. This era fell right smack in the middle of what's called the hypsothermal period. Basically, the Earth was going through a phase of significant global warming. And it was this incredibly rich, warm, and abundant natural environment that gave the Jomon people the surplus calories and the extra energy they desperately needed to tackle these monumental, sky-high architectural projects.
All right, Section 2, Tree Rings Tell All, Dating Ancient Wood.
So, you might be wondering, how exactly do we know the precise dates these waterlogged prehistoric timbers were chopped down and used for building? Well, that brings us to our ultimate archaeological detective toolkit, pioneered by Dr. Katsuhiko Kimura. Dr. Kimura's cutting-edge research arsenal uses dendrochronology, which is tree ring dating, alongside the analysis of buried ancient forests and a seriously fascinating technique called radiocarbon wiggle matching. All of this works together to unlock the secrets held directly inside that ancient Jomon wood. The real standout term here is wiggle matching. I know, it sounds highly technical, maybe a bit quirky, but just think of it like a massive jigsaw puzzle. Trees naturally absorb carbon, right? And those carbon levels fluctuate over time in a kind of wavy pattern or a wiggle. By taking the carbon variations inside a single ancient log and matching that specific wave exactly to a known historical master curve, scientists can pinpoint the precise year that tree was chopped down. It's an unbelievably accurate piece of detective work. Let's look at Section 3, Science Uncovers Age, Micro-Level Analysis. But guys, the science goes even deeper than carbon. For those massive pillars at Sinai Mariyama and Malwaki, researchers zoomed way into the micro-level using oxygen isotope tree ring dating. The beautiful, simple reality behind this complex name is that by looking at literally a single molecule of oxygen inside one tiny tree ring, we can see exactly how much it rained that year. That rainfall pattern acts like a unique, totally unalterable barcode or fingerprint for the climate, allowing us to perfectly date ancient wood. And the process itself is actually brilliantly straightforward. Step 1, you carefully excavate that waterlogged Jomon wood. Step 2, you analyze those tree rings and oxygen isotopes at the micro level. And Step 3, you cross-reference all that data with standard climate curves to find the exact year. This rigorous 3-step archaeological process is exactly what turns a muddy, forgotten log into a hyper-precise historical timestamp. You know what's really amazing, though? This microscopic science completely backs up the macroclimate picture. The isotope data proved that the warm hypsothermal period is exactly what allowed the Jomon to thrive and build their giant towers. But that climate barcode also showed what happened next, which was a severe global cooling phase. This harsh, sudden drop in temperature fundamentally changed their environment, completely forcing Jomon society to adapt their way of life and, crucially, their spiritual practices. It really sets the stage for what we end up finding in the ruins. Which leads us to Section 4, Jomon's spiritual world, carved in the ruins. So, stepping away from the hard science for a second and getting into the mindset of these people, what did they actually leave behind? Well, look at the treasures found sleeping right at the base of these giant pillars. We're talking highly managed, advanced chestnut orchards at Senai Maruyama, the world's oldest dolphin hunting base at Milwaukee, incredibly crafted wooden masks, actually Japan's oldest, and even jade brought in from trade routes hundreds of miles away. These artifacts prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that this wasn't just some basic survival camp. This was a highly sophisticated society with an incredibly rich, complex spiritual life. So why build the massive pillars? It's a really fascinating mix of the everyday practical and the profoundly spiritual. Practically speaking, yeah, they needed massive watchtowers and large-scale storage facilities for a thriving society. But spiritually, these towering wooden circles were sacred gathering spaces meant for rituals and nature worship. As archaeologists, we see these giant wood circles not just as ancient architectural oddities, but as the absolute spiritual bedrock of Japan. This deep, profound reverence for giant trees didn't just die out with the Jomon, it evolved. It is the very foundation that later gave rise to the breathtaking, massive pillars of Izumo Taisha, and it connects directly to the sacred Onbashira tree riding festivals at Suwa Taisha that are still passionately practiced today. Which brings us to this absolutely perfect summary of their culture. They were a sustainable civilization of forest and water. To the Jomon, these trees weren't just construction materials. They weren't just tools. Living in complete harmony with the forest's bounty, they viewed these massive trees reaching straight up into the heavens as deities themselves. They were sacred entities, forming a direct spiritual lineage that, as we just saw, stretches all the way into modern Japanese Shinto shrines. And finally, Section 5, a message for today. Giant tree culture. Bringing this all together, thanks to Dr. Kimura's cutting-edge science, we now know these giant wooden pillars serve a dual purpose. On one hand, they're literally microscopic climate hard drives, safely storing thousands of years of weather data. But on the other, they are massive spiritual beacons of a totally lost world. It's just this incredible intersection where modern microscience allows us to finally hear the macro spiritual message of ancient people who literally prayed to the forest. The Jomon managed to leave behind these incredibly sustainable monuments of nature worship, and their echoes are still felt in modern shrines today. So it makes you wonder, thousands of years from now, when future archaeologists are digging up our steel and concrete landscapes, what will they conclude we worshipped? What kind of society will they say we were? It's definitely something to think about. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll see you next time.